Okay, so a lot of you have asked me to do a seascape type of wave kind of thing going on. So that's what we're going to do today. What I like about this picture is that it has a definite light coming from the right side, and it's very subtle, but it's there. So we're going to try to see if we can create that and maybe make it a little more dramatic. So the first thing, as with all landscapes, you want to find your horizon first. So I put a grisaille down that's a very pale burnt orange. And the reason why I did that is because when I have a lot of blue, I'll use an orangey kind of grisaille, because the orange will warm it up, and orange is the opposite of blue, and so they oppose each other, so it makes the blue stand out, and at the same time it warms up the picture. The horizon on this is above the middle layer there. Not much, but a little bit. So I'm going to say it's probably about here. Right, because we want to make sure we get those pretty clouds. And I'm using an 8x10, which is a little more rectangular than the original. The original is a rectangle, but it's not as much. So the ratio is a little bit off. But because this is a landscape, or a seascape, we're just going to adjust it, you know. If it was a portrait, that would be one thing, or a building, you know, you need to have those ratios perfect. But, you know, when it's a landscape or a seascape, you can kind of fudge the ratio a little bit. So there's where the ocean meets the sky. There's going to be some clouds in there. And the clouds in this are rather beautiful. They kind of make up the mood of it, so it's important to put those clouds in. You know, a lot of people that do ocean scenes like this, they just jump right in with color and so forth. I will always start with a drawing. I think it's the teacher in me, and I think it's because I do love drawing. So it gets my drawing itches scratched. So there are several ways to go about something like this, and not any one way is correct or wrong. This just happens to be the way that I do it. So the clouds kind of make this little kind of L that's kind of in the sky up here. It's kind of a break, and it, once again, and I point this out constantly, it's the checkerboard pattern. So that means you've got one here, you got one here, sometimes referred to as a brick pattern. But the checkerboard pattern gives you distance, and it balances beautifully to the eye, the checkerboard pattern. It's something about it that just feels right. So whenever you can find those, put them in. If they don't have them, you can always just put them in. Do you see how it feels kind of, and I say checkerboard, and what I mean by that is, if you were to make this a square, and then this a square, and then this a square, you would have the checkerboard pattern. And then there's one down here too. There's a little bit of a space, not much. And we're going to skinny this one up just because, for one, I want to get more distance, and for two, that's where the ratio is hitting us, where we're seeing the difference. And you'll find it. When the ratio's not right, you won't find it readily, but when you're in the drawing process, you'll be like, oh, okay, I got to crunch that because the ratio's off. And that's where we're crunching. So, how many layers do we have to this water? Well, first let's do the negative space of this sand, which is quite beautiful. I wonder where this picture was taken. It almost looks tropical, doesn't it? Certainly doesn't look like New England water. I got this image off of one of those free license sites. They're great for an artist. You know, some people use them for like screensavers and stuff. Okay, so the next line I'm going to make is the edge of the wave. The wave is going to come up pretty high. So the edge of the wave, we want to make this platform feel of this foam. So I'm going to give this much distance here. Excuse me, another place where I'm crunching. I may raise it a little if I have to, but for the moment I'm going to start it there. And then there's an angled line that comes down like this. Now here's a nice little trick about getting the correct angles. There's so many different degrees of angles, and it's like, you know, if you're a math whiz, you can probably figure it out, you know, but if you're not, then here's a really nice way of figuring it. Imagine a clock around this, right? So of course we all know a clock, an analog clock. So we have a 12, 6, 3, 4. I mean, sorry, 9. So 12, 3, 6, 9. So then you imagine it on your photo, okay? And then you ask yourself, this line, if it was just a line going through a clock, what numbers would it be near? And then in your mind, you can make those numbers. That's a nice, easy way to figure it out. I learned early on working with children who did at the time know analog clocks. And they were really young, you know, so they were like 7, 8 years old, so they didn't know a lot about degrees and so forth as far as angles. So I got them used to thinking about it in the form of a clock. Okay, now there's that beautiful wave. It's going to come up like this. And before I go over like this, I'm going to find where it's going to stop. So it's probably about here. There's a little bit of a poke there. And it doesn't go all the way to the top because there's another kind of thin wave back there. So we're going to leave some space for that guy. And we're going to go like that. Okay. So then there's another wave, and it's kind of a little bit at an angle. So it's higher up over here, I think. Maybe not. So there's like 2 more waves. So the first one, well, there's one here, and it kind of goes across there like that. Leave about that much space because you need to throw in another wave up there. And then the other wave hits the horizon, and on the other side it actually, and it dips down, it actually goes slightly over the horizon and then dips down. So that just kind of tells us where we're at. Now as far as all the stuff in here, let's just do a gesture of that. So this part right here has a nice big one. We don't have to do all of them, just so that we know where we are. It's kind of like a mapping, so we don't get lost. Because these kind of things you can definitely get lost in. And there's some little ones here. I'm also feeling the crunch here as far as the ratio. So things are going to be a little squashed, but that's okay. I know a lot of you have 8x10s, and I don't want these videos to go on for too many days, which is why I choose to do these 8x10s. And sometimes that kind of messes with the ratio, but and then this is going to swing up. We'll just kind of give that gesture. And there's another little round part to Okay, so this is your basic drawing for it. There's a lot of little stuff going on there, which we'll do with paint. Now, because this color is such an incredible color, I don't want the grisaille to mess with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a rag and take a little tiny bit of the Turpenoid, and I'm going to rub that out. And I can't do it in this position. So hold on one second. And if it doesn't rub out very well, that's okay, then it won't mess with it. You know, I just want to make sure there isn't any on there. That should be fine. I'm also going to do the same thing with the clouds. Now the clouds are kind of dark, so it doesn't matter, but the tops of them, and you're probably not going to be able to see this too well, because I did rub it down quite a bit. You know, I think it'll be fine. Okay, let's start first with the sky. So if you notice, the sky on the bottom is very gray, and the sky on the top is very blue. Let's start first with the sky on the top, because it'll be easier to judge the gray. So we're just going to knock in a color up there. I forgot to put on, let's see. Okay. And remember, this is your first layer, so, you know, getting it exact is not really important. It's the gesture and the mapping of it that we're looking for today. Notice how I'm also leaving some grisaille, because I may want some of that. Okay, as it goes down, it gets a little grayer. And we'll probably add some colors on top of this in the next layer. So, like I said, just knock it in. The brush that I'm using is a number 4 Blick Master Stroke Filbert Red Sable. I get all my supplies from Blick in Cambridge. They are a great store. Cambridge is like a little town in many ways, and dealing with them is like dealing with a small town store. So even though it's a major chain. And Meg from Blick in Cambridge is a great person. If you see her, tell her I said hello. Okay, let's see what color that is. Seems too blue. Let's warm it up a little bit. There we go. So it looks like there's perhaps a storm leaving from this photo. So this is really a gray. This gray was made with blue, white, and orange. So obviously not a whole lot of orange and not a whole lot of blue, but the dominant was blue, and then I added the orange and the white. And orange, white, and blue will give you a gray. Now if you add more orange, it'll give you a very warm gray. If you add more blue, it'll give you a cool gray. This one, it's hard to say which one it's dominant. They're probably equal when you can't tell. But I can tell you I started with the blue. Okay, already we have distance. Do you see that? And that's just because of temperature change. But it feels like it could be miles away, doesn't it? Now, just to do a little bit of mapping, I'm going to take some titanium white, not the bleached, the bleached, not the unbleached. And I'm just going to hit the top parts of some of those clouds, but I'm not going to fill it in. I'm going to leave a lot of the grisaille there because we want to be able to eventually go in there with some warmer white, perhaps. Titanium is a very cool white. But I just want to get a sense of the light. Oops, I forgot a little bit of sky there. So the very tops of the clouds are lighter than the bottoms, which tells me that this is still very much before sunset, because if it was sunset, closer to sunset, the whites would be more on the bottom. So, the sun is the light source here, and it's above. Okay, now, just for mapping purposes, I'm going to knock in some darks on these clouds. This dark was made with a grayed down lavender. So my lavender leans a little towards blue. So I grayed it down with a, it's kind of like a peach, which is basically an orange, light orange. Not going to do too much in there, just a suggestion. We may go in with some even darker ones at some point. Then I'm going to take this color and this color and mix them together and put it underneath for a reflected light. Notice how I'm not being really careful. I'm just kind of knocking this in. There's a couple of different phrases we use at Acorn. One is, don't worry about it, knock it in. And the reason why we say that is because the knocking in process helps with the gesture. If you're too careful, you're going to lose your gesture. Gesture is very, very important. And the gesture is the feel and the balance and the weight of an object. Okay, so there's our clouds. Now let's start from the back and work down. So the back is this really beautiful teal color in the water. I don't think I personally have ever seen this color in water. Hands are shaky. So here's our horizon. It's like really dark back there, but I may do that in the next layer. I'm just going to put in this color here. And I'm sorry, my hands are so shaky this morning. I got to do it this way. Okay, I'm going to fix that edge. I want to soften that horizon just a little bit. So I'm taking that gray sky color and I'm staying on this side of it and I'm just bringing it down. And that loses the line. Now that color gets a little tiny bit lighter as it comes down. This is that wave. There's a wave here, but down here, and it's not an even line. It's, you know, it's a wave down there, so it's broken up. I'll be honest with you, I've never used this color on water before. It's actually quite beautiful. Probably because I always paint New England oceans. I was looking for a New England ocean, but I really wanted to get that incredible color that's in here, and you don't really get that with New England oceans. Okay, now for the waves, I don't want to start off right away with white because I want to be able to save that for the next layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take kind of an unbleached kind of titanium and just give a suggestion. It's going to feel like white, but when you get that second layer of white on there, then you know that it's really not. And we're not going to go crazy, we're just going to throw that in like that as a suggestion. And there's a huge one here, but in this one there's a lot of shadowy colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this color here and maybe a little tiny bit of that beautiful blue in it. So take some of this color and some of this color and mix it together. You should have those colors already. And then just give a suggestion, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, perfection and art do not coincide, so don't ever worry about that. It's amazing how many people do. And just gonna anchor in some of these waves. So an anchoring line is a line that's on the bottom of something. Usually you refer to it in a still life, you know, like, so let's say you have a cup on a table. It's that bottom rim on the edge of the cup that hits the absolute table to give it some weight. Well, the same thing can happen in many things, like clouds or waves. So anchoring is anchoring. It's exactly what it says. It makes it feel heavy. So just going to throw some in. I don't want too much because it is actually quite light. And what we'll do is we'll throw in some of that unbleached color. And don't be too careful with this. This is a wave, so it's kind of crazy. Just a suggestion. Okay, so now this beautiful color here. I made a color with, what's it called? Oh, I don't have the tube here. It's a type of, oh, I know what it is. It's cobalt turquoise. So I took some cobalt turquoise and some white. This color you can't just make. It's tough. If you have cerulean blue and white, you could try some of that. You may have to add just a speck, and I mean a speck, of yellow to get it. That's probably the closest you're going to get. But I happen to have turquoise at the time, so I used the turquoise. So the whole top half of this is very light. So I'm going to bring it to about here. And once again, this is just a knock-in, just to get the patterns. Kind of like a wash, only a little bit heavier. Then there is a slightly darker version of that. So the same thing, just less white. That kind of comes through there. And then in here, there's a grayed down version of it. So I'm going to take that color and let's see what happens if I just put it with a little bit of that gray from the sky. Might be too dark. Yeah, let's lighten it and gray it more. When you use similar grays that you've used throughout the painting, you know, like to gray things down, it's kind of like using a local color. Local color is in reference to something that feels like it's in everywhere, but it's not. Let me gray that down more. Sorry. Okay. I have to time these videos because my camera will just shut off. It's like crazy. All right, so now for under here, I'm going to add just a speck of green to it. So turquoise has a green property to it already, so adding a little bit of green just makes it just lean a little more towards the green as opposed to the blue. Isn't that a lovely color? Color's a funny thing. You know, I love color, obviously. My house is filled with color. And yet, the clothes I wear are always neutrals. I don't know why that is. I was noticing that the other day. I'm like, Isn't that lovely? What a wonderful relationship that whole thing is. And you can start to feel that effects of the storm. Okay, then there's this wave here. So we're going to add some gray to that to get that feeling. And we may darken that the next time around, but let's just throw that in for now. And then we're going to put some light on top. So this is the unbleached with a little more regular titanium in bleached titanium in together. So I don't want it too white right yet, but I don't want it too dark either. There's a huge one that's coming over here, so I'm just going to do that. Now we don't really see the foam on the top yet. We'll do that in the next layer. But what we do see is an anchoring line down here, just like we were talking before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that turquoise color, I'm going to add just a little bit of ultramarine blue. And I'm going to throw it in down here. And I'm softening the top part of the line and keeping the bottom part sharp. That's another thing about anchoring lines. It's best to do it that way. Oops. Okay, now let's do the sand. For the inside of the sand, it's a different color than the outside because this is, of course, got water over it, and the water's blue, so that means the sand color is a little more on the greener side. So I'm just going to, what I did was I took yellow ochre and I added a little bit of the turquoise to it. And I'm just going to knock that in like that. And there's quite a bit of those in there. Some that I've drawn, some that I haven't. So I'm just going to get a suggestion, and you don't have to have this exact, just a general idea of it. And then the regular sand is that, but a little warmer. And lighter. I should make that lighter. It's almost the grisaille color. Okay, and then the last thing would be the foam. So we're going to take some combination of unbleached and bleached titanium white together. If you don't have unbleached, you can always add just a little bit of, just a tiny speck of raw umber to your white. I'm just going to, not going to go too crazy, just going to give a suggestion. Leaving some of the grisaille through it because the white does have some variations of sand through it. Okay, so that's the first day. Now some of you may want to leave it like this because it's actually quite pretty this way. Some of you will choose to do the next video. Anyways, if you do, I will see you next time. Bye.